Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a type of video that I don't do very often, but because fall will be swiftly upon us, if you guys don't know, because I never talk about it, it is my favorite season. So I read a lot of books in fall, I look for a lot of good fall reads every year, so I feel like I just have a lot of fall recommendations that I could possibly give you. So that's what we're doing today. I did do a video like this last year where I recommended 20 books I think you should read in the fall if you guys want even more recommendations. But today I'm going to be going through 15 more books that I think are perfect fall reads. So I have a couple of categories. I have like adult YA and classics. And then within that, I have other categories. So we're gonna get on into that in a moment because first I would like to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Babbel. I recently started a new semester of school and sitting for hours in my classes focused on math and engineering honestly really makes me wish the experience of learning things that do not pertain to those subject areas. So Babbel has been such a nice addition to my routine. They are the top language learning app in the world, and I've loved being able to engage my brain in just some different subject material than it's used to. I love that their lessons are created by real language experts and they really do help to prepare you for practical conversations that you may encounter while you're traveling, while you're doing business, or just in your everyday life. It has been scientifically proven that you can start to speak a new language with Babbel within 3 weeks, which is honestly crazy. And they also do offer a 20-day money-back guarantee. So there's really no reason not to give it a try if you have been thinking about picking up a new language recently or brushing up on a language that you used to speak. As I said, I took about 4 years of Spanish in high school and going into undergrad. So it's been really nice to get back into that. I certainly don't remember as much as I thought I did, but their lessons have really been helping me get back into it a little bit. And thanks to Babbel, I can now say all sorts of useful phrases that may come up in everyday conversation, such as ¿Dónde está la librería? ¿Cuánto cuesta este libro? Compré 15 libros hoy. Also, please do not judge my Spanish pronunciation, but I'm trying my best. And I'm still having a good time. So if you guys have also been wanting to maybe pick up a new language recently or get reacquainted with one that you may already know a little bit of, you can click the link or scan the QR code that is on the screen for 55% off. So thank you so much to Babbel for sponsoring this video and supporting me and my channel, and to you guys who are watching this video as well for always supporting me and my channel. Your support truly does mean the absolute world to me, and I'm so happy that you're here. So with all that being said, it is time to get into my book recommendations. I am so excited to talk about some spooky books with you guys. So let me start out with some adult reads. I have some like spookier books, but like honestly for the majority of these, they're kind of like silly, goofy, supernatural rom-coms, which is one of my favorite subgenres to read this time of year. So I have a plethora of recommendations for you. The first of which is the silliest and the goofiest of them all so far, and that is My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. This is the first book in a series. The second book is My Vampire Plus One, which I also really enjoyed, and there's a third book coming out in the series this year as well. But the first book has remained my favorite. It is basically following our main character who is currently living in Chicago. She really needs to find a place to stay, so she ends up looking on Craigslist, and she finds this really, really nice apartment that's incredibly cheap, but she has to like live with somebody. So she calls them up, she's like, what's going on? Can I live here? And the guy on the other end of the phone, he sounds kind of weird. He sounds kind of funny. The way he talks is like a little bit archaic, but she's like, you know what? In this housing market, I simply cannot pass up a deal. So she ends up going to live with this random guy whose name is Frederick. He has some really weird habits. She's starting to notice that he's a little bit odd. He keeps weird hours. And obviously, as the title suggests, she finds out that he is a vampire. And romance ensues, because why would it not, honestly? This book is really just so fun. There's not a lot to it. It literally is exactly what I just described it as. But it's a good time. I love the love interest, Frederick. He's from like the 1700s, I think. So he's incredibly chivalrous. Honestly, they just don't make them like Frederick anymore, you know what I'm saying? It's also just such a ridiculous premise that you're bound to have a good time. If you're in the mood for it, it might be a little too silly goofy for some people, but for me, it was kind of perfect. Then next up, less on the silly goofy side, but still like supernatural romance kind of situation, we have Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. I read this last year and I absolutely loved it. It was just such a cozy, comforting book, honestly. Basically, you're following our main character, Belladonna Blackthorn, and with a name like that, obviously she's a witch, and in her coven, when you are about to turn 30, you have to partake in this trial throughout the entire month of October that kind of tests your worthiness as a witch, and she's definitely stressing about it, so we're watching her as she is going through that. It's also a very like coming of age, even in your late 20s kind of novel. She's still kind of figuring out her life. She feels like she's lost the spark with her magic, but also just with life in general a little bit. There's also a romance in this book, which is fine. It's not my favorite part of this book. Honestly, the thing that I love about this book is the focus on Belladonna and kind of the personal struggles that she's having. But the romance is good. It's a solid addition. It's with another, you know, like witch that is kind of being forced to help her with this trial. And she works in a bookshop. So truly, what more could you want from a witchy story? I don't really know. This book also has a sequel coming out in I think later this month, on like the 16th. So very, very soon, but this is truly just one of the coziest, witchiest, loveliest books that I've read in a while. It was just such a comforting read, honestly. Really loved this one. Then next up, I feel like I can't really go through this category without talking about one of my personal favorites. And that is The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. Are you annoyed that I'm talking about this book again? I really hope not, because I just think this is like the quintessential fall, mainly kind of like more Halloween skewed read. Basically in this book you're following our main character Vivi, who I think like 10 years before the start of the book is in this relationship with this guy whose name is Reese, and one day he literally drops the bomb on her like, hey, I'm actually engaged, like back in Wales. It's like not my fault, but like that is something that's going on. And she's like, get out of my house, leave me alone. And the night after that happens, her and her cousin end up like hexing him. Like, not actually, they were just doing it for like fun, but obviously they didn't actually like just do it for fun. So 10 years later, Reese comes back to Graves Glen, which is where Vivi currently lives, and some bad things seem to be happening to him. Truly just couldn't even imagine why that might be happening. And he ends up reconnecting with Vivi. They have like a little second chance romance situation. It is just so cute. It's so fun. It's got the perfect Halloween vibes. It takes place in this small town. This book takes place during their fall fair. Our main character's aunt and cousin run like this magic shop called something Wicked, I believe. And there's also a talking cat in the book who constantly berates the love interest. So like truly, like what more could you want? It's just so fun. I will obviously be doing my annual reread of The Ex-Hex. I hate to say it, but I've read this book 4 times now. And I'm gonna be reading it a 5th this year, so it is just not fall Halloween season if I have not read The Ex-Hex, so I will be doing this towards the end of September, and I cannot wait. It's just so fun. And then next up I have yet another witchy romance book. Can you tell I have a kind of fall book that I really enjoy? But this is one that came out last year and I absolutely fell in love with the kind of whole vibe and ambiance of this story, and that is A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kinney. I do have problems with this book, so like take that with a grain of salt. I think the romance in this book, it's lacking a little bit, honestly. But the reason I love this book is not for the romance, truly could not care less about the romance. But the Halloween fall atmosphere in this book is just so well done. This book has kind of been described as like a love letter to Halloween. Absolutely agree with that. If you are a Halloween person, you should really pick this book up. It's following our main character, Kate. Kate is short for Hecate, which is sick, honestly. She is obviously a witch, and this year her coven has kind of tasked her with hosting the annual Halloween gathering. So we're watching as she is preparing for that. She also ends up discovering this old tome of potentially forbidden magic. She also, one of the main things that I remember about this book is the cottage that she lives in. This has nothing to do with the plot, but the descriptions of her quaint, cozy cottage have stuck with me, and it makes me forever jealous that I will probably not be living in a cottage in the middle of the woods ever in my life. It really is the perfect Halloween book. There's obviously like the annual Halloween gathering that the witches are doing, but this town is also really into Halloween. There are a lot of festivities going on. There's like a Halloween parade happening at one point in the book, and it just feels like the perfect depiction of Halloween. Like this is how I would want Halloween to be done in my town. So if you want to pick this one up, I would really recommend reading it towards late October. Trust me, if you are a Halloween person, you will love it. And then lastly, for my more romance-leaning picks in this category, yes, I have another. It's also witchy. This one was not a favorite book of mine, but I think for a certain group of people, you might enjoy it. And that is The Spellbook of Katrina Van Tassel by Alyssa Palumbo. This is a retelling of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it's kind of if there was actually a romance between Ichabod and Katrina. But I personally really love the Legend of Sleepy Hollow short story. It is one of my favorite spooky things that I also read every single year. So I thought seeing it reimagined in this way was really interesting. Obviously the original story is very short and this is like a 350-page book, so it extrapolates a little bit. I feel like it definitely goes in some directions that I wasn't personally ready for or expecting, but I think it's an interesting read if you've ever wanted more from Sleepy Hollow, because I feel like the point of the original short story isn't really the characters, it's more so like the setting and the vibe and the autumnal atmosphere. But this one obviously fleshes out the characters more, it fleshes out the dynamics between the characters more, and the kind of struggle between Brom, Ichabod, and Katrina feels less gross, I guess, than it does in the original story. Because the original one is kind of like, oh my god, she's hot, she's mine. But you know, this one does a little bit more with it, so like, that's always good. But this one is just an interesting read, I think, for autumn. So if you like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, I would recommend this one. With some caveats. Okay, moving on. Next, I do have a couple of spookier reads that are in my adult category. The first one is also probably one that you have heard of many a time, but I read it last year and I absolutely loved it. It was one of my more favorite books of last year. It wasn't like a 5-star read, but I really enjoyed it and I remember reading it very vividly. And that is, of course, Slewfoot by Brom. This takes place in Connecticut in 1666, because of course it does, and it is following our main character, Abatha, who is living in this very small, very, you know, like puritanical village. She doesn't really tend to follow what the leaders of the village and the church are telling her to do, so naturally she has been branded a witch. And throughout the story, you're kind of seeing her as she is embracing that a little bit. She may be forming a relationship with like the literal devil throughout the course of the story. And I feel like it just has the perfect, like, dark, eerie, desolate feeling. It's a book that's gonna make you mad. It's gonna make you so mad at times, but you're also gonna feel so vindicated at times on Abatha's behalf as well. So it's just like a perfect atmospheric book. Again, I think this one would be best read in like late October. So I'm sure you've heard of this a lot, but I would also really recommend it. Then the last book that I have in this category is The Whispering Dead by Darcy Coates. This is the start to her Gravekeeper series. I've read the first 2 books. They're like 5 books out. I think it's a quintet, so it's only 5 books, but I've only read 2 of them, but I really liked both of them. And this one is following our main character, Kira, and at the beginning of the first book, literally like first page, she's waking up in this forest. She has no idea who she is. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know what year it is. And we're kind of following her as she is working through this like memory loss that she has been going through. We also see her as she kind of like stumbles into this graveyard. She meets the like caretaker of the graveyard and he ends up letting her stay in the caretaker's shack, maybe? So she's living in this graveyard. She finds out she can talk to ghosts, because why would she not be able to talk to ghosts if she lives in a graveyard? And we're kind of following her as she's just putting all of these pieces together and figuring out just anything about her life, really. She also ends up making some friends in town who are also kind of helping her along this journey, and I just really love the vibes of this book. It's not too scary, but it does have like some chilling moments to it. I love her interactions with the ghosts because it's a typical kind of her learning about them, helping them move on kind of situation. And I just love the mystery of Kira's past that is running through the entirety of this story. I'm gonna be reading the 3rd one, hopefully this month. So I'm interested to see how the story develops in that one, but thus far I've really enjoyed it. So if you are looking for something that's like a little spooky, not too spooky, would recommend. Next up, I do want to talk about a couple of YA reads. First of all, we have Where the Dark Stands Still by A.B. Poranek. This is a fantasy novel that is rooted in Polish folklore. We are following our main character, Liska, as she is trying to get rid of these powers that she has for some certain reasons. And there's this legend of this flower that's in the woods that can like grant her a wish, basically. But on her quest to find this flower, she actually ends up running into the demon of the wood, and he ends up kind of cutting her a bargain where if she will stay in his house and like essentially be his housekeeper for a year, at the end of that year he will help her banish her powers. One of my favorite parts of this book was the atmosphere. It takes place in this dark, creepy woods. I also love the kind of crumbling, decrepit manner that the demon of the wood inhabits. I also love the writing. I feel like it really enhances this kind of mysterious, spooky vibe that it has going on. Also, one of my favorite things about this book is that the beginning very much feels like Howl's Moving Castle. Watching Liska kind of go into this moody demon's house to just clean things, basically, very much gives me Howl and Sophie vibes. And I mean, if the cover in and of itself isn't giving you fall, then I don't know what to tell you, but this would be such a good atmospheric book for late fall. Next up, I have a couple of my personal favorite, more gothic-leaning YA stories that I would recommend. The first one, obviously, I would like to recommend Anatomy by Dana Schwartz. This takes place in Edinburgh in the 1800s, I believe, and it is following our main character who really wants to be a surgeon, but because everybody sucked back in the 1800s, they were like, no women are allowed to be surgeons. You are not allowed in my medical class, basically. But the teacher kind of cuts her a deal that if she can pass the medical exam without ever going to class, then she can become a surgeon. So our main character, Hazel's kind of like, okay, like, sure, but like, how do I do that? So she meets her other main character, Jack, who may or may not be a grave robber. Obviously, this is pulling from the typical story, which I think actually did happen, of, you know, unwilling participants becoming medical cadavers, basically. But I loved Hazel running around the streets of Edinburgh. It is definitely a very, you know, like dark and gothic setting in and of itself. I also love the little bit of a romance that is going on between Jack and Hazel in this book, and it's just a really solid atmospheric book for this time of year. This book does have a sequel called Immortality. I didn't like it as much as I enjoyed Anatomy, but it's still pretty good, but like Anatomy remains my favorite. Then I do want to recommend the first two books in a series that I really love. I wouldn't recommend the third or the fourth ones necessarily, but the first and the second books in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series would be perfect reads for fall. It has been a minute since I read these books, honestly, but I still remember my time reading them so vividly, and I just remember really enjoying the vibe of both of these immensely. In this first one, we are set in 1888 London, I believe, and we're following our main character, Audrey Rose, who is really into forensics and like examining dead bodies and all the stuff that a lady of 1888 shouldn't be into. So she ends up secretly apprenticing under her uncle with the help of this like guy whose name is Thomas Cresswell. Absolutely love him. Still one of my favorite YA love interests. It's just him and Audrey, their dynamic is so good. It's so good throughout the series. But this is also taking place during the time that Jack the Ripper was on the rise, so we're kind of pulling elements from that into the story as well, which obviously makes for a very like gruesome and gothic overall feeling. But I really liked this first one, but my favorite in the series was the second one, because in this one Audrey and Thomas end up going to, I think they're going to Bran Castle, and they're like staying there for is there like a school happening in there? I don't know, but it deals very heavily with like vampires, werewolves, that kind of situation. Whether or not they're actually real or not, that's for you to decide and figure out. But this book was a ride, honestly. Like both of these books are rides. For the most part, they're pretty normal, but like when you get to the end, it's just crazy, honestly. But in the best possible way. So like both of these are really, really good fall reads. Then for the last book in my YA category, I'd like to recommend The Library of Shadows by Rachel Moore. This is following our main character Este, who ends up getting accepted into this prestigious, like, I think it's boarding school. And she really wanted to get into the school because her father used to go there, but her father also recently passed away. So it's kind of a way for her to reconnect with him. As she's there, she kind of ends up uncovering some potential secrets about his past. She also ends up bumping into this guy who may or not be a ghost, who may or may not have some ghost friends that haunt the library there, who are also kind of helping her along the way as she is uncovering more and more secrets about her family's past. I love that it has a school setting. I love that it primarily takes place in a library, and I feel like this would be the perfect like early September kind of read. I just love an academic set book for early September. Then lastly, I do want to move into talking about some classics for fall, because I have read some classics this year that I would highly recommend you guys pick up in fall. The first one is a book that I, for the longest time, was really thinking was a good spring read, but like now that I've read it, I feel like it can kind of be read in any season. But if you want something that has beautiful autumnal descriptions in it, then I would highly recommend My Love, Anne of Green Gables. I simply will not sit here and go on about Ellen Montgomery's beautiful nature descriptions again, but like they really are just unparalleled. Anne of Green Gables is obviously, you know, one of my new favorite books. I love it so much. It is following our main character Anne, who is an orphan who ends up kind of mistakenly getting adopted by this brother and sister who own Green Gables. And the entirety of this book is very coming of age for Anne. We're following her from the ages of 11 to 16, and we're kind of just seeing a lot of the scrapes that she's getting into and the things that she learns from those situations. I have absolutely fallen in love with the Anne series this year. I love it so, so dearly, so I'd recommend, if you've maybe, you know, been hearing about it, thinking maybe you want to pick it up, maybe you should do it now. Then a recent read of mine, which again is not going to be like, you know, groundbreaking new read for fall, but now that I've read it, I want to recommend it. And that is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The late night fog shrouded streets of London is the perfect setting for a kind of a spooky gothic novel. And obviously this book has that. But it is focusing on kind of an outsider's perspective on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde is getting up to some questionable activities in the streets of London, trampling children. Maybe not the best look. And the entirety of this book is focusing on our main character kind of getting bits and pieces of the story, putting things together, and it really is just the perfect read for, I think specifically October. This would be a really good October read. It's very short. It's literally only like 70 pages, but I just really like the story. And if you want like a pretty atmospheric book, it's also like a little bit funny. In parts. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but like there's just some lines that make me laugh a little bit. I would recommend this one. And then the final book that I have for fall is not necessarily a fall read, but I'm putting it on this list and recommending it to you because I think you should read it in fall, if that makes sense. And that is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I read this last year in fall, and there's just something about characters setting out on an epic journey that screams fall to me. Something about it, even though it's very epic in scale, still feels very cozy to me, and I love reading high fantasy in fall. And I'd recommend the first one specifically for fall because I feel like in this one, Tolkien really takes his time describing the weather and what our characters are seeing and like these new places that they're going. And I think they set out during fall, so all of that, perfect storm. Would recommend you pick up The Lord of the Rings, all three of them, but specifically The Fellowship in fall. So those are all of my fall recommendations for you. Obviously none of these are like books that you've never heard of before, and they're probably also not books that you've never been told to read in fall before, but I just love talking about my favorite fall reads, so I hope you don't mind. Obviously I would love to know down below, did you like any of these recommendations? Are you gonna pick them up? Do you have any fall recommendations for me? I'm obviously always on the lookout for more fall books. Also, before we go, I would like to thank everybody over on my Patreon. If you're ever looking for more content from me, that is always linked down below. But with that, I'm gonna go. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you're all having an amazing Friday, or whatever day it is that you're watching this video, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!